Today it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here in presence and via online platform Zoom to the Munich Hydrogen Summit. Together with UniCredit Bank, we have put together a very interesting agenda for you, providing very up-to-date information and deep market insights. For those of you who do not know us, Watson, Farley & Williams is an international law firm having 550 lawyers and more working in 17 offices across the world. And we are working on complex energy, transport, real estate and infrastructure projects. By doing this, we are providing market-leading legal expertise for the development of projects, investments, acquisition and financing of international business activities. Together with Youssef Fahd from UniCredit, and my colleagues from the London office, Rome office, Hamburg and Frankfurt office, we all welcome you today. As we are known as Watson Farley to always being at the forefront of new developments, we are also already heavily involved in various green hydrogen activities. For example, a Munich-based team led by my partner Felix Siebler, who is today at another conference speaking, is currently supporting the public authorities on the establishment of a National Center for Innovation and Technology in the hydrogen sector, in German, Nationales Innovations- und Technologiezentrum, in the municipality of Pfeffenhausen in Bavaria, known to the experts, which shows that we are still in an early stage, but movement keeps on accelerating, and this center and many other activities which we today will hear about will further accelerate the development of green hydrogen. Today, as I already mentioned, you will benefit from first-hand insights into current hydrogen projects and hear experiences from those who are at the front of the market. We will learn today about new technologies and actual use cases. Several founders and representatives of innovative companies have found their way to Munich today. And taking advantage of modern communication technology, we have an international event today, linking local projects and activities here in Bavaria and Germany with projects in Sweden, Turkey, and even French Guiana. Equity and debt financing experts will show you how to finance in green hydrogen projects and how financing in those areas really works. And of course, we are a law firm, and therefore you will get up-to-date information of important regulatory developments. So before we directly jump into the program, let me just give you some brief further information about this afternoon's program. After opening remarks, and I will shortly hand over the speech to you, Youssef. After opening remarks, we will begin with the presentations. Each will last about 10 to 15 minutes, and there will be the opportunity for the audience online and here in the room to ask questions to the speakers. If you are participating online via Zoom, please use the Q&A function. My colleagues and myself will monitor the Q&A and will address the questions directly after the speaker has presented to us. Don't worry if not all questions can be answered immediately. We have a tough agenda and also some plans for the early evening. We're planning to have a panel discussion around 10 o'clock today, where we also have the opportunity to ask most of the speakers and to address further questions. We will have 2 breaks where you have the opportunity to grab a coffee, post on social media, answer urgent calls, drop an email or whatever you like to do. After the event, that's important information, the presentations will be made available to all participants, though there is no need for you to take down some detailed notes. So for the time being, this is it from my side, and I'll hand over to Youssef Fahd from UniCredit Bank to welcome you as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. And we're really happy to be here today and co-host this event together with Watson Farley Williams. We are at UniCredit. So my name is Youssef. I head up the Power and Infrastructure Finance team in Germany, which is essentially looking at all projects across Western Europe. And together with our colleagues from Natural Resources and other colleagues, we provide our customers, as you know, a European platform to invest alongside us. Hydrogen, as we all know, is super important to get into the low carbon economy. And for us as UniCredit, it's one of the key pillars of what we want to do. And that's why we're very, very excited today to be here, to have all the stakeholders here that will be, we talk about it, but we really want to get these projects up and running and get them into scale. We have the sponsors here, technology providers here, we have the debt investors here, and most importantly, we also have our lawyers here who usually tell us then how to do it. Without them, we cannot do anything. So I'm really looking forward to all of these sessions. It's going to be quite fantastic. And with that, I hand over to the colleagues at Watson Farley.
Perfect, yeah. Let me just briefly introduce our first speakers today. It is Maximilian Boemke, partner in our regulatory praxis group based in the Hamburg office. He has a strong focus on the energy sector and extensive expertise in advising clients on regulatory matters, including drafting and negotiating of supply, trading and project contracts, as well on all kinds of M&A and finance transactions. Today, he will be joined by Counsel Giannalberto Mazzei from our Rome office. Giannalberto provides legal advice to Italian and foreign companies on administrative law, energy law, public law, procurement and transport. As administrative law specialist, he has acquired experience in the energy market, both renewables and oil and gas production, environmental law and public law. Today, both of those legal experts will cover the EU regulatory framework for green hydrogen, as well as the results of the permitting working group on hydrogen of the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. Max, Giannalberto, I hand over to you, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, thank you very much for the very warm welcome. It's a pleasure speaking to all of you today. And since we are on a tight schedule, I hand right over to Giannalberto. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maximilian. First of all, I want to thank you, UniCredit Bank, and all the colleagues in Watson Farley Williams for inviting me and involving me in this event. I guess that this will not be the last one on hydrogen, focusing on hydrogen, because we have to put hydrogen in the center of our agenda. I will go directly to the point. 10 million tons is our target, 10 million tons of green hydrogen to be produced in the next 7 years and a half. Somebody would say this is ambitious. Somebody says we are late. So we need that all the levels, private, but both private and public levels, public administration, and the regulatory framework are set up quickly and properly. There are many obstacles and many barriers. These have been already identified by a report published last month by the European Investment Bank, which has normal, and I think this is familiar to all the person in this room, says that the uncertainty of the regulatory framework is perceived as a clear obstacle and a financial risk which is detrimental to the investment. So this is the main barrier that everybody will face during next years. These obstacles have been already also focused and spotted by the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which is an alliance made by stakeholders of the hydrogen market, established by the European Commission to identify with a bottom-up approach the bottlenecks of the permitting procedures. Have been involved, thanks to a referral by a client, in the permitting working group of the alliance, and have been lucky enough to work on the report which has been published the last months, immediately before the Repower EU plan of May 18. And first remark, all the experience of the stakeholders, including me as a lawyer, derives from the permitting process of the renewable. And so, first consideration, we will face during the next 7 years 2 parallel challenges. We have to create new renewable plants due to the principle of additionality, on which I will leave the ground to Max. And we have to create the conditions for the hydrogen plants to be fully operative quickly. So 2 additional challenges in parallel. And the regulatory and administrative obstacles and barriers which we have identified in our work can be split in 2 categories. Those which are peculiar of the hydrogen market, lack of legislation, lack of standards, and lack of proper preparation and knowledge by the public authorities. Other which are maybe common to the renewables plant and the hydrogen facilities. I will focus only on the main obstacles, not all that we have summarized in this table. First one, of course, the length and difficulty of the permitting process, which is mainly due to the plurality of interests and administrations which take care of these interests. Cannot be easily overcome, but it's a problem. The other one is the absence, in many cases, and all over Europe, because the working group takes experience from all the member states, of fixed peremptory deadlines for the conclusion of the permits. Which are the recommendations and the remedies we have tried to suggest to the Commission for further suggestion to the member states? First one, the fact that each member state should identify one administration, the so-called one-stop shop, which is competent, or at least competent for permitting, or at least competent for coordination the activities of all the public interests involved. This is a serious, but I understand that could be not realistic in many cases. Second, and probably more important, is to approve the principle of the positive administrative silence for which cannot be applicable for all the cases, but for some plants which are little sites or in the industrial area. So the possibility that a plant is authorized if the peremptory terms are exceeded. As a lawyer, I'm of course very curious to see how this principle will be implemented in each member state. This will create some issues of liability of the public servant. It will be necessary to redefine the authority of each public administration. So these are challenges also for the member state and for the system, the administrative system of the member states like Germany and Italy. But these suggestions, which have been spotted by our working group for the hydrogen development, are also being perceived and very well met by the proposal published by the European Commission for the amendment of the RED II directive, where we can find in Article 15 and 16 the combination of this principle. In particular, in Article 15, we have we see the duty for each single member state to make a plan of the go-to areas for renewables, and the plans that will be established in these go-to areas will enjoy a time limit of 1 year for the permitting. So the interest that we have identified for the deployment of the hydrogen plants are seen and considered by the European Commission very important. But more than this, the European Commission has also identified the establishment of the new renewables as overriding public interest over the other public interest, which is the very disruptive principle of the future directive. It says that the creation of new source of energy or green energy is prevailing as a presumption, of course, in principle, over the environment, over the landscape, or over other interests. Also, this has to be implemented in a way, declined in a way which is compatible with the constitution, with Italian constitution, the German constitution, the Spanish constitution, which provides the same principles and the same safeguard of the environment and landscape as a values. So these are the legal challenges that we will face, and a strong one, and strong challenges also for all the operators. Then I will leave the ground for the principles of the two delegated acts and proposal by the European Commission on May 18.
Thank you. Yeah, a long question arose for quite some time. What is green hydrogen? The answer to that is not easily found, because of course you can say, well, it's hydrogen produced from renewable energy sources, but that's only part of the answer. And if you're looking into the issues which come with that answer, you are basically being direct into the issue and this is the problem. That means, for example, you mentioned the criterion of additionality. If we say, well, it's hydrogen produced from renewable energy sources, we need a lot of renewable energy sources. So can I use a wind farm which is already existing to produce hydrogen? Well, if so, do we have a battle for renewable energy plants? Are electrification and e-mobility battling hydrogen? That's a huge issue if you think about scaling hydrogen production up. If we think about grid congestion, that's another huge issue. If we say, well, in wonderful Bavaria, lots of water, not so much of renewable energy yet, but we could produce wonderful hydrogen electrolyzers, put them here and produce hydrogen. If we have the energy in the north, the renewable energy wind farms, we just need a grid which can bring all the electricity from the northern parts of Germany into the southern parts of Germany. That's an issue we're already facing. So that issue could be worse. So in order to tackle these issues, the European Commission provided a so-called delegated act, a draft for delegated act, I should say, under the Renewable Energy Directive 2, which deals with certain renewable objectives for the transport sector, and the draft delegated act also deals with the transport sector, but it's quite easily to be imagined that this draft for green hydrogen will now apply into all kinds of business sectors. So we waited for this draft delegated act for quite some time. The European Commission took more than a year, more time than it initially thought it would do, to provide us with a few definitions of what is green hydrogen and what are the requirements for green hydrogen. And I will only focus on one use case, because there are two use cases. One is where the electrolyzer has a direct line to the renewable energy plant. That's the easy one. And the other one, the more complicated one, is where the electrolyzer is sourced with electricity via the grid. So I have the grid in between the electrolyzer and the renewable energy plant. So what is there? There are certain requirements which I need. And I will just briefly focus on these and don't go into each and every detail of what we have here. So you need, there's a requirement that you need a PPA, which is kind of self-explanatory. If you want to supply your electrolyzer with renewable energy, you have to have a supply contract. There is requirements on the location of the plant. Where does my wind farm, where does my solar farm needs to be located in order to be, for the electricity to be accounted fully renewable in terms of hydrogen. That plays back to the tackling of grid congestion issues I mentioned earlier. There has to be a temporal correlation between power production and hydrogen production. That part alone has been on the subject of very, very intense discussion, and still that's part of where most of the issues today are seen by the electrolyzer industry. One other point, which is really something where in particular Germany was quite sad when this was made part of the draft delegated act, is that no previous funding of renewable energy plants was allowed. That means a wind farm which has sometimes in its lifetime received an EEG funding or another form of public funding will not be eligible to being used for production of green hydrogen, which is, in my view, a huge setback. But from a European point of view, I can at least understand where the EU is coming from. Again, for Germany, that's kind of a huge setback if we say, well, we have lots of wind farms which in the next years will exit the EEG funding period, and none of these wind farms, as of now, will be used to ever produce 1 kilowatt hour of green hydrogen. The additionality we already said, that means I need a new wind farm, I need a new solar plant, I need a new renewable energy plant if I want to produce hydrogen. And the reason for that is that you don't want to have a battle from various energy usage cases for green electricity. The best news is there are transitional rules applying, and these give an early these provide early starters with a huge relief in terms of many of the points I just mentioned and raised. So what we will see is that in the next 3 years, probably most of projects will really start to become operational, start to become operational, which is a huge push for the hydrogen market, because these transitional rules can make a huge difference. In terms of, I told you it's a draft, it still is a draft. There was a short period of time where stakeholders could provide input to that draft that ended on 17th of June. The EU has stated, I checked it just before we entered this room, has stated that it will probably, the delegated act will probably become public and will be issued end of 2022. That's the current timeline for this. As I said, that's for the transport sector, but it will provide a role model for the entire industry. That's quite safe to assume that this will be, or most of these parts will be, the definition of green hydrogen with we all going to be working with in the next few years. Back to you, Giannalberto, for a few last words.
Oh, I would say that I will leave to the other. I don't want to take time for the other discussion. In Italy, we had the same remarks regarding the principle of previous funding of renewable plants. So that will be an issue, and will probably not change in the final draft.
So the good news is we have something to work with. That's really something where the market was sitting and waiting for this draft delegated act, and really from a legal perspective and also from a market and commercial perspective, it's good that we have something. I don't agree with all of the provisions, but it's good that we have something to work with and to get our heads around and to start with projects. Thank you. Thank you all for your kind attendance.
Any initial questions from the audience at presence? Or do we have any Q&As in the online channels? There is one question. Heike, yeah, please. Just a second, we will provide you with a micro.
We were just debating this here, so sorry about the slight noise interruption. So I'm working quite a bit for international developers. And my question is, if, for example, I am a hydrogen developer in Chile, in Namibia, in the UAE, and I'm now shipping either via ammonia or liquid hydrogen green hydrogen to Germany or anywhere else in Europe where all of this applies, will I be green if I don't follow all of these criteria? I.e., is this an extension of the European Union elsewhere in the world, or how will that work?
Specific project in that regard. It's called Certify, which deals on an EU level with the question of how do we provide certificates which promise that green hydrogen elsewhere fulfills criteria to be green. It's not yet certain whether these criteria which apply within the EU will also be taken one-to-one to use cases elsewhere. The discussion is currently in that regard that they will not, because Namibia may not have the same grid congestion problems which some European countries have, but some of these will apply.
Something like additionality and so on.
Additionality may be one thing which will apply. There's a huge discussion about whether you could use other green certificates to then, in taking your example, Namibia, use grey electricity to and use certificates to make it green if you develop a wind farm somewhere else in Namibia. I think that's a bit too far off. So Certify says, well, no, we really want to see, okay, that wind farm supplies that electrolyzer in order for the hydrogen to become usable as green hydrogen within the EU. So short answer is there is an entire working group working just on the procedure for making hydrogen certificates, which then certify the greenness of the hydrogen.
How
Because
many
then
lawyers?
the question is also how reliable those certificates will be
Yeah.
from certain countries. Yeah.
I don't know, and I think no one in the EU currently knows, but I know that there's this group and another procedure to tackle exactly that issue.
One further question?
Could you please elaborate on what you commented before, your understanding of the European Commission on when setting this restriction on the qualification of the, or not qualification of the plants as green hydrogen if they have obtained, or if they obtain a kind of renewable energy support like the EEG? Is there any chance that is changed?
Thank you. In my personal view, no, this is not going to be changed. That's something where the EU fought quite hard, and the reason for that is twofold. First of all, it's the EU has always seen any kind of funding system as kind of state aid, and with state aid, there should be for the operators there should be no golden end, because there's no payback mechanism under received state aids. Which should allow the operators to have a golden end at hand. That's one of the reasonings, to say, well, we funded you, that's okay, we did this, you earned money, fine. But if you now re-enter the system and may have a usage case which would allow you, your wind farm is written off, that the 20 years have period is fine, we give you another 10 years or 5 years, where with your usage case, you could rather gain huge profits. That's entirely contradictory to what state aids are being developed to. Whether this holds true or whether it doesn't, we can have a huge debate over that, but that's the reasoning behind that.
Thank you, Max and Giannalberto. We have some further questions in the online function, but I suggest to postpone them a little to our panel discussion. I learned, thank you very much, Max, Giannalberto, I learned that many people in working groups are trying to fix the regulatory framework in order to accelerate hydrogen projects. That's also the aim, as I understand, of other initiatives and enterprises, amongst them digital to be marketplaces. Let me welcome together with you now Dr. Björn Lüssow, who is co-founder and managing director of Hyfindr, a digital B2B marketplace for developers and operators, which is supposed to find or to support suitable components, system and services for hydrogen projects. The aim of the platform is to increase transparency in the hydrogen industry. And Mr. Lüssow has specific experience. Before founding Hyfindr, he was playing a significant role in setting up the joint venture, which should be well known to you, H2 Mobility in Germany, when working for Daimler as an M&A lawyer. He acquired more than 15 years of experience in leadership functions in the automotive industry. Today, he will talk about digital B2B marketplaces and how they accelerate international hydrogen projects. Mr. Lüssow, we are very interested in your speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer, and thank you to the two hosting companies for giving me the opportunity to present my ideas and our company to this elite group. And also a warm hello to the online community, which I heard is quite extensive. Congratulations. So, Hyfindr is operating a rapidly growing B2B marketplace. And we are driven to bring transparency to the global hydrogen economy to help it grow faster and better. And the reason why I'm here is I want to introduce in a broader scale to you the concept of B2B marketplaces and then explain why we decided to act. And I want to give you all one question to reflect on. Amazon is there for more than 20 years, and I guess everybody in this room has made a transaction on Amazon. This has not been the case 10 years ago. The real question is, why? I want to structure my speech basically in three chapters. First, I want to give you some examples of other B2B marketplaces that exist for other economies. As this forum here is dedicated to financing of hydrogen projects, I thought it is a good question to ask ourselves, what is actually a hydrogen project or a fuel cell project? Is that clear to everybody? And last but not least, I want to present hyfindr.com to you, which you might find interesting. Here is an example of a European marketplace that is there for 20 years. It is Mercatio, and their core USP is they connected to many companies via IP interfaces and making it easy to do digital B2B procurement. They have more than 25 million products registered, and it's a very efficient platform. Another interesting marketplace, Xometry. They are fairly present in the news, and they decided to tackle the problem of a company that wants to build small parts or prototyping parts. They have built a network to connect to 2,000 manufacturers globally, making it easier for the company to do small parts, tryouts, or small series. Another marketplace in Germany, Chemondis. They decided that we need to do something on chemistry, selling and buying chemistry. They have more than 1,600 suppliers registered. You can even negotiate contracts digitally on this platform. Last but not least, for those who believe that you can only sell books on a platform, I found a marketplace hosted in the United Arab Emirates, and they buy and sell the biggest machines of all, yeah? And they do that also to other countries, not only locally. Very interesting. The question now is, what do all these marketplaces have in common? And I found that there is one thing that every of these marketplaces in common. And that is basically they started all very small. Have a look here. This is Amazon. More than 20 years ago. Jeff Bezos sitting in his cellar somewhere, typing on a stupid computer, yeah, going for the world to deliver this marketplace. The founders of Mercatio, former McKinsey advisors, sit together with one computer dedicated to drive the industry. And that is, when they did it, they looked weird, but they did it and executed on it. And more seriously, the advantages of marketplaces are very clear. Their main function is to connect demand and supply. In addition, unlike a trade show, they are there 24/7 globally. Yeah? This is a huge advantage. Imagine how much effort it is to come to this place to connect or to go to a trade show. They reduce on both sides the transaction costs to connect. It's easy to find, it's easier to sell. And last but not least, all these concepts have a good business model because they can scale very easily. The investments that need to be made to offer it to a wide customer grade are not linear. So technology enables scaling. If we now look more specifically to the hydrogen economy and to my question, what type of projects do we hear? This is not right or wrong. I just said, let's take out 3 types of projects. And I think one of the projects most of you mainly have in mind is like production of green hydrogen. Yeah? And I ask myself, what do these projects need to accelerate? Yeah? They need partners, including off-takers. They need financing, be it public financing or private financing. They need the hardware actually, and according to a McKinsey study, 500 billion will be invested in until 2020-30. And most of the money is actually going in hardware. But systems is not everything. You need components to connect it, and you need service providers, be it to structure the project, be it to build it, be it to maintain it. So it's a huge ecosystem you need to put together to get such a project on the ground. And how great would it be to find a place where you can easily see all this? The second type of projects is actually system design. Stephen and I, and please Stephen, shortly raise up, my co-founder, unlike me, he's an engineer, so he understands all this stuff. But system design is also a project by itself because it goes from designing, prototyping, small serious production. And what they obviously need is as well buyers, right? Every project wants buyers. They need subsystems, components, and also services like development services. Yeah, so it's a project itself. And Stephen and I, we worked at Mercedes together on a project and built a prototype for a fuel cell material handling application, a 3.5 tonner in 9 months. And we had the situation that 2 months prior to the design freeze, we were desperately seeking for a hydrogen blower. And we searched the entire world in the year 2019 for a hydrogen blower globally. Google, WhatsApp, telephone, everything. We found this component after 6 weeks, 100 kilometers south of Stuttgart with bush vacuum, because they had a component currently in the certification process for hydrogen. But it is a huge effort, and this problem is out there globally. A project is also building a component. This is by no means easy. This is a fuel cell air compressor, and this, if you want to optimize this project, they are currently very costly and driving the cost of fuel cell system. So they are in constant optimization. They also need components like this seal of Elring-Klinger. So all these projects need buyers, components, services, and partners. Yeah? And this is why Stephen and I decided to act. We built Hyfindr.com. In the year 2021, we founded our company. We now have, I'm the only non-engineer. We have 4 engineers, including Stephen, and we built a product that engineers love. We decided to build a marketplace for the hydrogen economy. And it is easy to find products. We have more than 450 products on already registered, and we register each and every product with the technical specification. And it's live there. It's not a prototype. You can visit us. And we have a small film here that shows the functionality, if it's working. So this is our website, and I guess you see now that we have different type of products listed, components, more than 130 categories. We have systems as well, electrolyzers, we have services and equipment. More than 75 brands have registered their products already. And now you see the USP of our company. So imagine an engineer would try to search for an inverter. We do high quality listings, and if an engineer is specifically interested in a technology readiness level, he can select, and it makes easier to compare the components. So actually it's working quite fine. And you should see in a minute a comparison of these 3 components according to the technical specs. And now please remember what I said to you. It took us 6 weeks to find it. We reduced this basically to several minutes. We're making it faster for engineers, and then they can fill out a form, directly connect to the vendor. Yeah? And that is what we provide, and it is very inspiring to build a product that creates value. We have more than 75 companies on our marketplace registered. Our onboarding pipeline is fully loaded with 80 companies. We want to grow our marketplace by the year 2024 to 500 companies, and we think that we can achieve that based on our analysis. So, what is Hyfindr offering to the hydrogen economy? We make it easy to find products and services. You can present, if you are a supplier, your products globally 24/7. We reduce the costs associated with getting connected. You don't have to go to a trade show to talk to somebody. You go to our marketplace, find it, fill it out, and then you are in contact. And we have generated real business. And sometimes an email can be worth than 1 million. So we have seen leads that saying, I'm interested in your hydrogen refueling station. Can you help me? I want to build it. This is a project on its own. So we are adding real value. We are growing rapidly. Our average growth rate currently on the main metrics is 20% per month. So we are not in a linear mode. 6,000 professionals are visiting us every month, summing up to some 25,000 page visits. Our brand is growing on LinkedIn. We send to our subscribers every month an updated directory so that they are informed about new components. And we also educate the economy with neutral articles on components. And we have 30 more in the pipeline and do that together with our brands. So, since this month, we are also backed by Google. 700 companies applied for it. We are one of the very few selected in Germany. 6 have been selected in Germany, and that is a huge boost for our business, which will help us grow further. And I want to give you also a little insight in Hyfindr, because we all have nice slide decks, but reality is basically more like this. Yeah. So and you can take 2 things out of this. Yeah. First, Stephen, please stand up again. Stephen looks much better than on the picture. So that's the first takeaway. Thank you. And second, it is really fun and inspiring on building a product that creates value and people love. Yeah. So to summarize, and I've thought about this for a long time, how I can summarize. I really believe that digital marketplaces can help grow the hydrogen economy on a global scale better and faster, and we want to be that marketplace going forward. We are here in Germany, and Germany is a rich country with rich people. And most of the billions that our country has made were made based on the old economy. We are now at a turning point where this money needs to channel into the new future. Hyfindr is there to help. We are willing to speak to everybody who needs us, be it our marketing power. We are in a helping mode. I would love to see Germany take a leading role here, and being bold in their activities, just like we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lüssow. Are there any questions from the audience? Not the case at present. Thank you very much, Mr. Lüssow.
You're welcome.
I clearly understood that two things are accelerating international hydrogen projects: good engineers and some lawyers. Well done. We were talking about technology, about platforms, about first elements of financing, but now we need to talk about projects and opportunities. That's where we all are looking, desperately looking for. And I'm very pleased to welcome today and to present to you, introduce to you Ali Köse, who is the CEO of H2 Energy Solutions. The company was founded at the end of 2020 with the aim of planning and supporting projects for the production and use of green hydrogen. In his presentation, Mr. Köse will talk about the company's recent hydrogen projects in Turkey and the associated opportunities and challenges. Mr. Köse, we are pleased to welcome you at the stage.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, Mr. Bauer, thank you for inviting me here and giving us the opportunity to introduce our company and our projects. It was pretty interesting to hear the finance aspects from Mr. Wörth right now, that there are not many projects to finance worldwide. And I think we are here and we have good ideas and we have good projects to produce from Turkey green hydrogen. So just let me tell a little bit about our company. We founded this company, like Bauer said, 2 years ago in Germany. Why we did this? I'm already in the renewable energy section, where I have a solar park in Turkey, and we've been producing green electricity almost 5 years right now. So, after Germany declared its national hydrogen strategy, there's now a big demand of green hydrogen. So there's also a big gap of green hydrogen. It has to be imported from other countries. So Germany was talking with Australia, with Chile, with other countries, and Turkey was never mentioned. So Turkey is not, doesn't play a big role, also right now not a big role. We want to try to change this. So we said, what is the sustainability to import from Australia with ships green hydrogen to Germany and to use it here? So what can we do in Turkey? What does Turkey offer? It is much closer. We have much more better relationship, I think, sometimes not, but sometimes better. So maybe we could be also bridge for this. And also Turkey needs a lot of green hydrogen for himself. Right now it doesn't play a big role maybe, but in the future it will, because of the carbon tax and everything for his own export industry. We need a lot of green hydrogen in Turkey as well. But let's, just a few words to Turkey. It has more than 50 gigawatts of solar, wind, and hydro energy right now. And within this next decade, it will even double. And yeah, the country will have a huge domestic demand, up to 5 million tons of green hydrogen to carbonize its own industry, like steel and cement. But Europe plans to import over 10 million tons of green hydrogen. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Turkey to play a role at this new industry. So let's take a look where Turkey is, and I think everyone knows, but just to show you the importance and the solar potential of Turkey. Turkey is like southern Spain or northern Africa or Middle East countries. We have almost the same solar potential or even more. I myself have a solar park over here with, just to say one number, with 1 megawatt, or per 1 megawatt, we can produce over 2 million of kilowatt per annum. So this is a huge potential I think not many countries have. So, but not only solar we do also have a great potential in wind in Turkey, especially the western side, at the Aegean coast in Turkey. There's a huge potential and also a lot of wind parks. As I think some of them is also was financed through your banks in Turkey. So, but those are the wind and sun that I think everyone knows. But we do also have a big, high-skilled and well-educated middle class, which can provide all required workforce. So people are well-educated and are experienced with renewable energy already. And also there's a big green energy industry in Turkey. There are many panel factories, and also parts of wind energy is now produced in Turkey. And of course, Germany and Turkey for Turkey is Germany the largest trading partner. We have very close relationship, and we as a bridge between two countries try to connect those dots and to work together. Just the last slide to show you the importance of Turkey, geographical importance. So this is the TANAP pipeline. We think we could use later on for transportation the hydrogen from Turkey to Europe, and so solve the transportation problem. After all these advantages of Turkey I just mentioned, we said we have to do something and we have to start something. Unfortunately, Turkey hasn't declared a hydrogen initiative right now or strategy right now, but we did. We said in the next 10 years, we will try to have electrolysis power larger than 1 gigawatt. We want to have more than 20 hydrogen refueling stations and bring more than 1,000 fuel cell electrical vehicles on the road. This is our task, this is our plan, this is our dream. I think, so if you look at Germany with how it works here, we try to do the same in Turkey. So all those hydrogen hubs, they shall produce their own hydrogen by themselves and use it also by themselves at the cities. And we are the corridors, all the cities shall be connected together. So, but our main goal is to repeat, to produce large amount of hydrogen in Turkey and export it to Germany. But I think right now the time is not ripe for it. So we have to start something with a project, with a pilot project. And we think the only section who can pay this high price of hydrogen right now is the transportation section, like also in Germany. So this is a High Gaziantep, we called this project. It's a city in the southern border of Turkey. There I went, I think it was last month, to the mayor and said, we want to decarbonize your public transportation system because we need to have a demand of hydrogen so we can produce hydrogen at the same site. Said, okay, what shall we do? No one knows about hydrogen buses in Turkey. So in Germany and everywhere, there are a lot of buses running already, but in Turkey, there's no one. So I told her exactly the same words. Imagine, from your own sun, from your own water, from your own air, and from your own soil, you will produce your green hydrogen. And with this green hydrogen, we will have hydrogen buses, and they will drive with zero carbon. I think nothing better could happen to a mayor or to a municipality like this. And we see this as a strategic product. Of course, the price is high, but the city is independent. So it doesn't depend on diesel price. Diesel price went up like 300% in the last year in Turkey. So no one can calculate what will happen in the future. And we, as a country, we don't depend anymore on Russia, on Arabic countries, or such other sources. So for this project, we needed to show the whole cycle of hydrogen production. Because how can we produce it? What do we have to do? So we said, let's do it in 2 stages. Our first pilot project is to get started with 10 hydrogen buses. For 10 hydrogen buses, we need 1 megawatt of sun power, solar or wind. So the municipality has already his solar park. 1 HRS, 1 filling station, storage on less than 1 megawatt of electrolyzers. The OPEX, the cost or the CAPEX at this case depends on the buses, 10 to 12 million euro. And we think we could, with this system, with this cycle we show, we can produce the green hydrogen for under 4 euro. I haven't talked right now about the avoidance of CO2 and everything. It's still a financial model for the city to be done. At stage 2, in 2 years later, we want to go to 50 buses, and then we might get the cost down to 2 euro. This is a project the municipality will put, of course, its own money, but we are looking for green finance. So just to repeat the same here, with 10 buses already, city could save 200,000 euro, and with 100 buses later on, about 5 million euro compared to diesel. And diesel price, we say, with the current diesel prices. And all the others, CO2 avoided almost over 3 million tons with 50 buses. It's something, I think, fantastic. So, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, our main goal is Turkiye. It is the production of 50,000 tons of green hydrogen till 2030 for export. How do we want to do it? With whom do we want to do it? So, here we work together with one of the biggest holdings in Turkey. They have already more than 700 megawatts of renewable energy, and they are also financially pretty strong, I think. Not I think, it is. Sorry. So, the city of Mersin is here. This is the Mediterranean Sea. Just at the harbor, we want to have the plant, hydrogen plant, let's say here. This is the plot for it. There's the Mediterranean Sea. Here we want to set it up and bring the green electricity from Konya down to there and maximize it from 100 to 500 megawatt electrolyzers power until 2040 or 2035. So just some financial parameters. Green electricity price in Turkey, we would calculate with around 5 euro cents. Production price in Mersin, we think we could produce this. We could produce the hydrogen at the smaller scale for 3 euro per kilo, and of course it has to be shipped right now as ammonia from Mersin to the EU, which also 50 cents had to be added. So this is the part which we will and we can do in Turkey. Now I am coming to the part what we need from Germany or from Europe, how to develop such a business. In the past weeks and months, we have been working together, very closely together with the German Chamber of Commerce in Istanbul, and with DENA, and with Jülich, and with the German Ministry of Energy also. So we brought them together in Ankara, so also the Turkish side and German side was present. We had many talks, and we tried to make a kind of agreement between Turkey and Germany that there will be a hydrogen strategy for the future, so that some contracts could be made. But as you all know, we are all business people, so no one will invest in such a project if they don't know to whom can I sell the green hydrogen? Where's the customer? So everyone's talking, oh, we have to import this and that, but whom? Where is it? And to which price? And to which conditions? And this project is around 300 million euro. So the owner says, I am willing to put 30%, no problem. But the rest, we have to find a good green finance. And much more important, we have to find the customer who's willing to buy. So maybe your business model is a good thing for it, I think. So I think the governments can make a line and laws, everything, but B2B has to work together, and companies from here and from there have to come together somehow and make some contracts. And yeah, this is what we want to do. And I want to finish my presentation with the wordings of a friend of us, who is the CEO of ThyssenKrupp. He always says, in hydrogen products, in hydrogen projects, you have to think big. And if you think big, then think bigger. And after you think it was big enough, multiply it 10 times, and then realize it. But now it's time to realize, it's time to act fast, because others will surpass us other ways. So we are very excited about all these projects. There are much more to come. We are also interested in producing electrolyzers in Turkey. We are in talks with some companies here to get them to Turkey, produce for the Turkish domestic market as well as for the export. I think there are also some companies which we could also present in Turkey. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kruse. Are there any initial questions in the audience? Several. We start in the back and then go to the front. Mr. Engelmann.
Yeah, equity investing. The first question with regard to your transportation system in the city. What kind of a currency that this city can pay? Turkish lira with a depreciation potential, or do they pay in hard currency like euros?
Actually, it has to be paid, of course, in euro or in dollar, because all the credits right now, I myself, like I said, I have a solar park, and we took our credit from your partner in Turkey, Yapı Kredi Bankası, and it was also based on euro, and we paid our credit back in euro.
Okay.
But then 2 years later, we had the chance to convert it into Turkish lira. So we save a lot of money afterwards.
And the second question, the shipment is ammonia from Mersin to European Union. That means you have, and you're looking for customers in the ammonia business, or you want to recrack ammonia somewhere, what we have also seen already in some business models. You want to recrack, or you use ammonia really as an NH3? Or how do you get the nitrate out of H2, for example, if you go for your beloved RED II transportation systems? Because of fuel cell, you kill fuel cell if you're going to go with ammonia. So how you want to take care of that, because this cost is not included here?
Okay, I am not I am not the engineer at this part, but we know what others do. So, like if you see the project in Saudi Arabia, which Thyssen is going to do right now, so they do also the same. They will convert it to ammonia and ship it to Germany. But just one factory, just this big 2 gigawatt factory plant in Saudi Arabia cannot cover all the CO2 which Thyssen is putting at the air. So you can see the market, how big it is, and how big it will be. The transportation problem is still a big problem, we know that. But therefore, we will start with these buses, with this pilot project. And this is not only our problem, this is a problem of everyone who wants to produce. We will learn, and then see how it goes.
There was a further question?
I speak up loudly. You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation.
You need it for the online
Okay.
participants.
You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that you also think of transporting the hydrogen via the TANAP and the TAP pipeline. How would this work? Because after all, this is a gas pipeline.
Yes, I mean, there are talks right now to get this converted to hydrogen or mix it with 20% to the gas line. So there are some projects on thought. I mean, those are all projects which could not be achieved in the next year or year afterwards. But in the future, I think this is the task we have to do. Because with ships and vessels, the industry cannot pay these high prices. And if Germany says we have to import 80% of our green hydrogen from all over the world, how do others do it? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Köse, for this very interesting presentation. As a forum like that, we are a little bit running over time already. When I saw your heat map, Mr. Köse, it reminded me a bit about the temperature in this room here. We are doing our best, but we all need to save energy. National crisis. But let me please introduce to you the next speaker, and I promise after this speech and interesting presentation we will have a break and a lot of fresh and cool water for you. Andrew Cope is now talking to us. He is the co-founder and president chairman of Hyref, a developer and manufacturer of fuel cell systems that use biomethanol as an energy source. Before founding Hyref in 2015, Andrew worked in the automotive supplier industry for over 15 years. Today, Andrew Cope will talk to us about Hyref's fuel cell technology and how it provides environmentally friendly off-grid energy without compromising commercial viability and operating performance for telecom infrastructure. A big promise, and we are keen to hear what the idea beyond. Mr. Cope, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I hope I'm not the weird guy here now, because I'm talking not hydrogen. I'm talking about methanol, but I'm talking about fuel cells, and I'll give you a reason why that's the case. So what we're trying to do now is actually make future reality. And how that looks like, I actually want to show you through a short video, and then I'll come back to and then discuss about the problems and the solution requirements that customers and the markets are actually providing. Enjoy. Okay, so I hope you got a little bit of an impression what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. So the question really now is, what is the, how does it continue? Not too fast. So the problem now, or the question is, what's the problem and what are the solution requirements? Okay, the first part, environmental impact, I think is clear. Everything that comes new to the market has to be green, has to be environmentally friendly, and also has to reduce the nuisance known, let's say, by, let's say, a diesel generator, for instance, being noisy, having vibrations, and so on. And typically, new systems should not need additional infrastructures and this kind of thing. Today, the system also has to be usable and deployable. Okay, meaning if we go out, if we sell, if we put in something in place, the energy source has to be available, and it has to be available everywhere. And the system needs to be ready to go. Solutions very quickly deployable, no civil infrastructure needs that are necessary to avoid long periods of time. You know, regulations typically today, if you want to have 1 kilometer of power of grid, it costs a lot of money, over 100,000 on average, and takes up to 2 years. So we can deploy more or less within weeks, okay? Even if it's an interim function. And it has to be scalable. Things grow, you start small, you bigger, you don't have to, we heard it already today, you know, you can easily scale, you don't have to replace or buy a complete new system. And then at the end of the day, well, it only makes sense to deploy something if it's reliable. And the cost obviously also has to be in such a case that at least the customer sees no increase in cost. It's par at what the level is today, or it's actually even better. You'll see that in our case, we achieve these items and actually achieve much more beyond these criteria. So we want to talk about the telecom sector as one use case. We see that as a major use case for us at this point in time. Why? There are a tremendous amount of white spots out there. The telecom industry says, you know, it's very difficult. In some cases, I would agree. Some cases, maybe it's just said so. But as I just mentioned, it takes a long time to get allowance to put grid into the earth, and it takes a lot of money. So here you see some deployments of our system here for Deutsche Telekom, for instance. This is one example what the customer wanted it to look like. We have 2 containers, a standardized product that can easily be transported by a truck. The one is filled with methanol, about 7,000 liters, and the other one has the fuel cell, some batteries, and an inverter. Not necessarily needed, but in this case, the customer wanted 230 volts, which then goes over here to the mobile tower, and that is reconverted back down to 48 volts. So we do what the customer wants. So at the end of the day, this is here the real system you see here in the middle. The size, that's a 5 kilowatt system, is about 7 for dimensions, so you have a little bit of an understanding. It's about 70 centimeters deep, 40 wide, and about 25 high. The new system that we have now created here, for instance, is a modular build, because the telecom industry typically ranges between 2.5 kilowatts for a single usage up to 10, 15 kilowatts, depending on how many providers are there. We've built up this system here that allows to just plug and play, take a system out, put the next one in, or even add another one, and it's automatically connected in the back, and it's ready to run. The size of the tank depends really on, as you've seen in the film, really depends on the use case and what the customer is looking for. It can either be a backup system where we have small cartridges that they're all double wall tanked, so secure. We can set them up anywhere. We have the allowance to put them even in areas where, you know, water, environmentally problems areas, let's say, like in water restricted areas and so on. So there were many ways of looking at it, but this is, I think, how we set it up and how we can now deploy it in an easy way. Just want to jump here. There we go. Sorry. So again, why do we use methanol? It's very quickly. It's readily available everywhere. We also use biomethanol where the customer is wanting us to use it. We have there's actually one big company producing biomethanol in Germany, and when I mean biomethanol, I mean real biomethanol, not with certificates. That we use him as a supplier, a very big chemical company here. And going forward, we see more and more technology arising where this is also possible to be decentralized. So many investors or companies that talk with us, 50% of our time we talk technology, and the other half is about where do you get methanol? Yeah? How do you secure that the supply and these kind of things. So methanol also, to the question that just arose before with ammonia, for instance, methanol also can be used as a storage component, right? As a transport module, and methanol, as you know, maybe is one of the, is a very easy, the simplest alcohol, and is produced, I think, over 100 million tons a year. So it's very wide range of use of methanol. We also believe in partnerships. Just to give you an indication, we are a smaller company, but we work together with quite a few blue chip companies. One from the technical standpoint with Jülich or Fraunhofer, operational standpoint for batteries is one here, Strabag, and Tinex in Norway, components, Johnson Mazzei or Hansa from an electronic standpoint. But I think very important here is to say that the increase in pilot projects and discussions we are having now with pilot projects has increased substantially over the last couple of months due to the fact that diesel has become so expensive. So so it's really not only the people's mind that they think, well, I want to become green, I want to do something better for the world. Now it's really, because they notice it in their pocket, it's now really becoming reality. And we are getting quite a few inquiries also from areas where you would not even think, Africa, Egypt, Sri Lanka, wherever from. So the question is, just to give you a little bit of indication, I don't want to go into much detail on this because there are quite a few numbers. All I want to say is if we compare, this is indicative, if you compare with the diesel generator, which typically is, let's say, from our point of view today, in that range we were working in, more or less one of the competitors where we compare ourselves to, specifically in the telecom sector. So if you look at that, by using the fuel cell technology, we actually, despite the fact that we have a higher investment cost, the payback is actually within 1 year or even can be even less. And in this comparison, I find to be very kind towards the diesel generator because I'm using 170 as a price per liter, and I'm taking 20,000 hours as the duration before how long a diesel generator actually lasts until it is replaced. Now, talking with our customers, they say, you're way too generous. Yeah, forget it. After 8,000 hours maximum, we have to exchange the diesel generator. If, again, we are talking here more or less 365 days running, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Okay. So it's not only environmentally friendly, it's also economically viable. That's kind of what this is supposed to tell you. Beyond that, I want to show you a little bit also the range that customers are coming to us and saying, okay, can I use it in the maritime area as a botnet structure kind of scenario, maybe as a range extender in the truck area, some local e-vehicles. With Telecom, we talked about infrastructure, and even now in the e-mobility, maybe to give you also an example here, we are also working now together to put up a pilot project for mobile charging stations as well. So imagine, infrastructure needs to be built. It takes time. In this case, you can put your charging station wherever you want, whenever you want, and you can be flexible and adjust to it, and or compensate the long time until maybe it's set up. You can deal with it in that case. Yeah. So that's really it. I hope I saved some time a little. Made up. That's so. Didn't talk about hydrogen, but I think we produce hydrogen where we need it. So let me say it this way.
Thank you very much, Andrew Cope. One question. Do you have one with you, and can we combine it with our air condition?
Well, that's actually one point I didn't mention. It's just to be one, if I would have one with me, it would work, first of all. Secondly, for every kilowatt of electrical power, we can also actually have 1 kilowatt of thermal power. So with that thermal power, we could create actually cool air. It would definitely help.
We will start with an interesting view from the equities perspective. Please join me in welcoming Thomas Engelmann, Head of Energy Transition at KGaL. Thomas has a long-standing expertise in energy investments, having worked previously for Allianz and Siemens. Now with KGaL, KGaL is a leading independent investment and asset manager with around 11.2 billion in assets under management and 4 billion in assets under administration. Its clients include institutional investors, in particular insurance companies, pension funds, and provident funds. KGaL is starting to integrate hydrogen projects into its asset classes. Today, we will learn about equity investments on the KGaL method. So, Thomas, I hand over to you, and we are keen to hear your view on that.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me. Perfect. Good afternoon. The first thing is for the audience, and thank you to Watson Farley to organize such a great event, because 5 years back I spoke with my colleagues about hydrogen, and I thought I am a nerd because nobody was really thinking about why I'm speaking about hydrogen. Now with KGaL and with the strategy we have in FICE, I hope we are now a club of the willingness, we call it, and we will realize in 5 years, if we see us the next time, I promise we have integrated some other investors into that space, and banks as well. Okay, not saying so much about myself, looking about the expertise and the track record, as Dr. Bauer said already, KGaL is a specialist equity investor for, and let's say, a long-lasting experience. We are active in the market of real estate, aviation, but we don't say aviation now anymore. We call it now sustainable mobility. What does it mean? I can only speak about sustainable infrastructure. Here I can clearly say what is mean and why we are investing it. KGaL is not an IPP. So we are not holding an asset based on renewables and grow. What we are an illiquid fund investment partner. From the technician's point of view, we are an Hyfindr, and we can invest into renewables. In our part, the last 15 years. KGaL has always, all over Europe, an installed basis of renewable electricity, not in Turkey, but I come to that in a second. And we know exactly, we have a team of 60 people, so we have the capacity like a small IPP. But our investment strategy is not being an IPP. We do everything in the best and good interest of our clients. As Christian said, we are a typical asset manager, English spoken, a GP. We're going to go into the projects, into the markets if we realize that it makes sense. When do we go in? How does it look like? Important for me is none of this is related to fossil fuels. That means we are free on fossil fuels. I looked at UniCredit and you say, okay, on one step, and I don't move too much, you are in oil and gas markets. On the other side, you want to decarbonize. Where do you start? Okay. Here, Kegel, the fund we have in mind is definitely without any CO2 because it's completely new. Good. Kegel by itself, this park is also CO2 neutral because it's only onshore wind, offshore wind, solar PV, and a little bit of small power, hydropower. Important for us is, and we very clearly said, whenever we want to tackle in the project, the fund, what we want to serve to our clients, as I said, pension funds and so on, we want to do it green. What does it mean? Every of our projects have to be assessed separately to the IRR, which is important, to the, let's call it, reduction potential in CO2. And this is a phase for us as equity investor, which is very important. It does not mean we look for certificates in the project because we want to sell green hydrogen. So our client should get the proceeds out of the CO2 reduction. What we have is we're going to ask for an SFD Article 9, and my colleague Rafaela, which is today here as well. Yesterday we had a whole day workshop with technicians and not with ESG consultants, because I said the ESG consultants can explain me how I fill out a template, a table. But what I need is the pure technical understanding of a process. This is the reason why we go together with technical consultants so deep into the chemical related structures of a project and see when is a project green. What does it mean, does a project is green? This is what we do. We just make it here. We want to have to a very high extent taxonomy aligned. And I don't hope that we have to say the clean taxonomy and not the dirty taxonomy. I hope we stay with the normal taxonomy, which focus on green hydrogen. So this is what we look for, and it will be a fund SFD Article 9. So we're gonna, at the moment, in the process of BaFin regulation and registration. This is the reason why we speak officially about the word strategy. Market opportunity. I do not explain you so much about Fit for 55. You know why we are looking into it. The only thing is what you're saying, we are not investing into hydrogen because it's a sexy molecule. Forget it. We want to see, as Dr. Wirth said clearly, why is this project sexy? Why is it a value add to the market? And then we can understand also why we can invest and how we can invest in. So now this is a very important schedule because from a technical standpoint, whenever you can and do something electrified, do it. Don't think about a molecule. So don't bring it into the part of saying, oh, I'm RED 2 now, and I do it on the boundary conditions of I want to produce hydrogen. On the other hand side, you will realize hydrogen is a very dominant molecule if you want to be flexible. I saw today the value of methanol. Yeah, methanol is a derivative which is very strongly related to hydrogen. I saw today the point of the transport sector. The transport sector is either electrified or we go into a fuel base, what is very often in a transport sector integrated. Maritime sector, aviation sector, as I said, will come, not the next 2 years, 3 years, but it will come because the pressure on the demand side will be bigger and bigger. And we realize already Lufthansa is asking us, what should we do, where we do get these airplane related fuels, which be CO2 reduced, CO2 neutral, CO2 free. This is a question mark what also other demand partners have. For us, and how we look into it, everything starts on renewable, and sometimes we use the word waste, because waste is, if waste will be burnt, then let it for the utilities. This is not our job. But if waste can be identified as a recycling element, then you have to go into your European directive and say, okay, what kind of an element you have on waste? This is what we also look into that fund. That means we're going to look into elements on the starting point of, we call the word technically, prime energy. That means where is the energy coming from? This is where we start always. So whenever we start the fancy slides, the first question I have, who is the offtake? Black box. And where is that stuff coming from? And if this is clear to me, I say, okay, let's see one step deeper, deeper and deeper. Important for us is also hydrogen is attractive for a lot of industries. The renewable sector is, with or without storage, goes into the electricity market. So in the one hand side, I agree with UniCredit saying, oh, you had your feed-in tariffs, this was so sexy, it was definitely infrastructure-like. This is not the case on hydrogen. On the other hand side, the market and the demand pressures and pressurizes towards the demand of CO2 neutral products. That means the push will come from that side, and the renewables in principle are cheap compared to oil and gas. The problem we have at the moment on renewables is, as long as we link it to oil and gas markets and the merit order is fixed to that, our renewables get high in prices, which is potentially good, but it's bad for our hydrogen markets. And that means we look into business modules where we combine certain elements of producing renewables and produce hydrogen. We are really agnostic where we do it. So Turkey could be an option. The only thing what I want to avoid is a lot of political risk if I want to sell into the country where we have at the long run a huge inflation. And we know about inflation and what it means for us in the markets. So we want to really see hard currency underlying structures behind. But nevertheless, I think the investment strategy we're going to face very clear. And now, just from a pure part, one part what I see today, I would say this is nearly venture capital, okay? The other part goes into the value add area where we say this is private equity-like. Our market normally, let's call it this way, plays a very fancy area in core plus areas. But here in this equity investment areas, we realize this will be our clients in 5-6 years. These are the pension funds or the industry who can say, okay, this is de-risk. Where do we stand at the moment? On hydrogen projects. So whenever I see a bank speaking about structuring the project and so on, yeah, a final investment decision that we can make the capex coming in grow will be somewhere here at the very end of the development. Most of the projects we realize, and if I see to green steel, I see all the green steel projects in Duisburg, in northern Sweden and so on, where they are. They are somewhere here in that area. The FEED study is done, the permits are looking for. So it's an opportunistic approach to value add. And the fund we are looking for, why we think now is the right time for equity investors to steer in. We don't go into that area because the planning concept is so much venture capital-like, so much private equity core-like. The structures are different. What we believe makes a lot of sense is start now here in that time of the development phase. So take the development risk if you understand really the technology. This is the reason why we ask sometimes the stupid questions of how did this work in detail. And then we go along and then we believe the de-risking that we can bring a project to financial close means we really go and de-risk the project, and it takes 1 or 2 years. But I believe that the structures what we have in the market are completely aligned with we can bring them to that phase, because the back end, that means the off-taker, very often the off-taker has capacity, we call it, they have guarantees, they have a balance sheet, and they want to reduce their CO2 footprint. And this is what we realize, we hope, and I look to Dr. Boemke, that also the regulatory support will not come in 10 years, because then some projects will fly, but the majority of the projects will die. And this means we do not get into the so-called fixed cost reduction on the electrolyzers. Our investment philosophy goes only for electrolyzers. And here I see definitely also alkaline PEM. Yes, I see it as attractive. The SAOCs, I see it completely like you. I would say I would love to have them available, but the problem is the best thing is you have a heat source in parallel. If you have no heat source, then it's a more complex situation, but I'm looking forward to see these projects coming up. Okay, so that means we would look into that area of investment, value add driven. And this is important to know because this is exactly the value of equity, what the bank's looking for. And very often developers do not have these 20, 30 million, what sometimes, or 5 million even, what we need here in order to de-risk the projects at that time frame. Selling the projects somewhere in this area where we realize also that the warranty period is over, the project is now in good shape, it runs, we know exactly how the electrolyzers work. As you know, we calculate after 8 years somehow the 17,000 hours stack replacement. Sometimes I saw developers sent me over a business plan and their stacks were running for 30 years. Exactly. I said, okay, where should I start to explain now? So, you know, but this is the work we do as equity investors. We have a team available, also on technicians. KGAL has more than 60 people on financial capacity, but also deep know-how on the technical side. At the moment, we are running for chemical guys, so chemical engineers, because this is so important to understand really the process and value chain of that stuff. A last word, then I'm finished. We believe also that we do not do these projects alone. I believe more on the, we call it offshore wind farm philosophy, or if I come from Siemens, the typical 3-4 partners together make the SPV running. And that means for us, we believe that either a manufacturer, a Siemens, or or an off-taker, sometimes a project developer, because sometimes project developers could be big, and a financial investors, they play a very important part. Governmental body with subsidies are supporting the SPV and the banks coming in. The banks will come in. The problem is we have to bring the project to a schedule that the bank can come with their mandate letter, and Watson Farley is coming along and I said, okay, everything what you ask we don't have. So why should, This is the problem I will see in the next 2 years. The market will change and the projects will come for project finance. Because without project finance, it's only corporate. You will never grow on some corporates. Think about the renewables market. Do you think that we have this volume on renewables if we would have left the market for RWE by EnBW and E.ON? No. It is a huge potential if we go into the capital markets. We hope inflation stays stable. That means interest rates are not collapsing. This is a little bit of a crisis then for us if we have that situation, but a little bit of inflation is definitely not bad also for us because we are inflation hedged, because the prices for our commodity also will then increase. Okay, in a nutshell, that's it. This is the small disclaimer because I'm not speaking about a fund, but in hopefully 6 months we see us again with the fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, there are.
Yes, I have a quick one for you. And this is about the investment concept, because we all are hoping to see more and more electrolyzer capacity coming into the market and thereby cost reductions kicking in. So how do you protect your early investments in next year's time or 2 years' time against cost reductions in the future?
It's the one of the major questions what we always have in mind. The point is definitely we have 2 options here. It's the off-taker long-term agreement plus a guarantee. Yeah. So the off-taker must bring us out of this market risk, because what you discuss is market risk. It's like the battery cases. If we're going to invest in an electrolyzer and have a 3 years, 5 years off-take agreement, and we have to, let's say, renegotiate another offtake, and we are in competition with the new electrolyzer costs, forget it. No banks will give us any money. So our concept is very clear. We need the first-time off-takers who can absorb that. Or, I look again to the regulatory part, we need a structure where either CFDs, for example, coming in, because the CFDs are the instrument what really goes to the market price and can sharpening it out. For us, important also the capex reduction, because if we have an IPCEI project available where a part of the capex costs would be absorbed, then we have a little bit of a buffer. But without a long-term offtake agreement, I think it will be very hard to get it financed. I speak more for you, I think, here.
What is your return requirement?
On the project side, I think it's definitely double-digit numbers, clear, because we have to go in early. It's a private equity-like approach, and we take risk. And risk and yield belongs together. That means it's not a core project fund where you have to, let's say, a lower cost on financing. So we are definitely double-digit numbers for project side in the area of 12 would be okay for us.
Pre or post-tax?
Pardon?
Pre or post-tax?
Post-tax where?
SPV tax.
SPV tax passed.
Maybe a simpler question or harder question. What are the first type of projects you think you will be looking at in terms of, I don't know, geography, or what type of project is that?
Yeah, we were mapping. We said the one who has the biggest pressure, and I heard sometimes the word ThyssenKrupp, are the very CO2 intensive industries. Unfortunately, their processes are far, far away from market, because you compare a process with coal. The CO2 price is 40 euro, 50 euro, and you compare it with a completely new process. So this is but very attractive for the society. That means if I would give subsidies, I would not spread it around. I would say these are the industries we have to transform. And these industries need these kind of subsidies if they want to change the direct reduction plant, but they need it, because if they don't do it, and if we do not support them, we have a different society in 10 years. This is one part. The other part is the market which we are closest to. And I'm completely with one of the partners who's saying transport sector here plays a role. But the point is, you said you saw it on our on the slide. Whenever you can electrify it, please. Don't say, oh, I have a RED II and I go into it. It makes no sense, because you will kill someone, because if the project makes no sense, because you're always behind the break-even of a battery, you cannot come into that market. But we believe the transport sector is one part. Maritime sector is huge, and they have to reduce their CO2 footprint. And this is a sector where I believe we need methanol, or we need a fuel cell. The problematic part on a fuel cell is the higher the load, the lower is the Wirkungsgrad, the efficiency. So you have to really analyze technically project by project. But what I can say in a nutshell, transport sector or hard-to-abate sectors are really in the focus.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you so much.
Now we want to take you on a journey to French Guiana, where a very interesting hydrogen power plant project has already been realized, as I learned. Please join me in welcoming today online Giles Newton. He is a business development director for the UK at Meridiam Infrastructure. Meridiam is a Paris-based global investor and asset manager, specializing in the development, financing and management of long-term public infrastructure projects. Before joining Meridiam, Giles worked for SSE and Pinnacle Power. Today, Giles will tell us more about the interesting project in West Guiana. This project in the municipality of Mana is currently the largest power plant project in the world that stores intermittent renewable energy with hydrogen, comprising 128 megawatt hours of stored energy. Giles, it's a pleasure to have you here with us now online, and I hand over the word to you.
Great, thanks very much. I hope you can hear me okay. So, apologies that I can't be with you. My colleague who is based in Berlin, who was due to be speaking to you today and certainly has had involvement in this project, is closing a very important milestone for UK and German collaboration, which is the NeuConnect interconnector, the 1.5 gigawatt bidirectional interconnector, which is a project that Meridiam have led. Could I ask, at the moment I can only see myself, not my slide pack. Okay, there you go, thank you. So I'm here to speak to you about CEOG, which is a project that we have been developing since around 2018. It is clearly, I'm sure based on the conversations today, it's a project that is using existing technologies that we all know a huge amount about, but the way that we're combining it into store intermittent renewable power through electrolysis and compressed hydrogen storage before then re-injecting power back into the grid using fuel cells, we believe is very innovative. And this is the type of project that Meridiam really likes. We like complex infrastructure projects where we can use our development expertise to get into the detail and really work these projects towards financial close. So if you could go on to the next slide. I should say that I have been leading Meridiam's recent work in the hydrogen space, and before Meridiam I was at SSE, for those who don't know, is the largest UK utility, and I was there for 4 years, and certainly SSE has some very interesting projects in the hydrogen space, recently announcing that Keadby 2 and 3 will become the UK's first fully hydrogen powered CCGT plants. So our CEOG plant is in a very unique geography, which is why perhaps this model works. It relies on, or the reason we've been able to develop this facility is due to the very unstable power infrastructure in French Guiana, and therefore also the very high cost of production. So this, we'd be very open in saying that this project in its current structure won't work everywhere, but what we're really hoping are the lessons learned from this one are very applicable across the rest of Europe. So this is a project we've developed alongside SARA, as well as HDF, HDF being the company that specializes in hydrogen production and the developer of this project. It is a solar PV, lithium-ion battery and hydrogen storage facility, as I then said, with a fuel cell to re-inject power back into the local grid. The crux of this is that we are able to provide a firm capacity guarantee to the French Guianan grid, and the network operator is actually EDF, this being a French previous colony. So we are able to provide 10 megawatts from 8 AM to 8 PM, and then dropping that to 3 megawatts for the next 12 hours. What I would say is those are cautious figures. Ultimately, as we get into the operation of the plant and understand the power flows better, I suspect that 3 megawatts, given the hydrogen storage that we have on site, perhaps we can be a bit more confident that we can provide a higher megawatt rating. So overall, it's enough to power 10,000 homes, but critically, I think, obviously this is a totally zero emission plant, and by that I mean not only no CO2, but no particulate matter, no carbon monoxide. So a fantastic story of what is possible in the world these days, using technology that we all have to hand and that's been available for a good many years. We've reached financial close for this project. We've broken ground, so the construction has started. Financial close was September, so the end of last year, and we are now in the construction process. So you can go on to the next slide. Here are some key figures. It's 171 million capex. We're storing 120 megawatt hours of renewable power, saving 39,000 tons of CO2 per annum, and we've re-injected 17 million back into the local economy. The equity ticket is roughly 20 million euros as well. And to the next slide. So I thought some of you might be interested in more of the technical challenges that we're facing on this site. We are guaranteeing a very high availability on this. What's been interesting actually is part of the challenge that we faced with this project that causes that high price, or high wholesale market price. It is grid infrastructure, and even with us providing a baseload power station using hydrogen and renewable energy, we actually are still curtailed by the local network, around 300 hours a year of curtailment. Hopefully that will be upgraded as EDF are under a higher voltage remediation plan over the next 7 years. Talking about the unique geographies, the counterfactual price for power production in this space is actually diesel generators. So when I joined Meridiam, I think I laughed and said, "Oh, 268 pounds or euros per megawatt hour will never work in the UK." But here we are 4 or 5 months later, and perhaps it doesn't seem so crazy for a dispatchable on a dispatchable model. We've got a significant amount of solar on the site. Obviously, the solar irradiation in French Guiana, very close to the equator, is high. Although still, what's been very interesting in the technical solution is that we have to have a lithium-ion storage unit on site to manage intermittency behind the meter through the electrolyser. That's managing power flows through to the electrolyser. That's something that's been really interesting for me to understand. We have a 16 megawatt electrolyser, which is a significant electrolyser. I'm sure certainly the ones that we're looking at in the UK and Germany at the moment are around the 10 megawatt figure. Albeit we'd love to see that move up towards 100 in the future. So we do have a large hydrogen storage potential, probably a lot more than we need to, as I said, on our guaranteed offtake basis, and that obviously has been thinking of Thomas, the last speaker, we have been able to make this investment because EDF are willing to provide a 25-year PPA based on our solutions. So, but certainly as we move through this technology, or the technical solution, we think that there's a lot of room for perhaps renegotiation, to be a bit more aggressive as we understand the technology and how the power flows. So on to the next slide. I think really I've covered a lot of this point. French Guiana as a country has not the peak power demands that we see in Europe, but certainly they are seeing a large population growth, but also significant electrification of a number of their processes and consumer behaviors. So they are having to move through a very rapid increase in power generation, and critically they don't have, thinking of our UK to Germany interconnector, they are not interconnected with any other countries, which makes integration of renewables, as we all know, very, very hard. So on to the next slide, please. For those interested in the structure, here are the partners. We have been able to secure a significant debt gearing on this project. Certainly that is something that Meridiam really tries to do. You know, we believe there's a great place for lenders in reducing the overall cost of capital, and through that 25-year PPA, there's enough security to gear that up to 80%. We are working with Siemens on this on an EPC and O&M basis, and obviously HDF, just to call out, are a key partner on this and are looking at a similar model, using this as a test bed globally, and certainly that's something that we are looking to do as well, which takes me to the next slide. So finally, what are our next steps and what are our lessons for future markets? Do I think that the CEOG model would work in Europe at this point? Certainly not without some form of CFD or cap and floor mechanism on a long duration storage basis. The technology will be proven, the costs will reduce. I'm sure that's been a familiar message today. So never say never, but our focus will be this model on similar geographies to French Guiana. What has been really interesting for us over the last 4 months is we've been looking at a lot of projects in the UK. For those who don't know, the UK government and BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, have released the structure for what they're calling the hydrogen business model, which is a CFD-based support mechanism, which will support green electrolysis plants by providing basically a spot price, which effectively BEIS will pay the markup or will pay a proportion that allows the green hydrogen producer to sell that hydrogen at an equivalent cost to natural gas. So that's a fantastic scheme, soon to be released. Applications were due to open on the 5th of July. I was with BEIS today and I'm very certain that they're going to miss that target. But the structure is there and that's giving a lot of confidence for investment. The key message that I would take from our lessons in the UK though are that because it's still such a nascent market, we haven't been able just to satisfy ourselves with saying we'll produce green hydrogen and then allow someone else to come along and distribute it and sell it. We are now having to vertically integrate the whole approach through green hydrogen production, through to distribution, refueling infrastructure, and perhaps then even, I'll call it a rolling stock model, where we would acquire hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for a public authority and lease them back to them, with public authorities really the only viable counterparty at the moment that can look long term enough to make this happen. So still a really challenging market to invest. We like to roll up our sleeves and try and get these types of projects through to financial close. Really keen to speak to anybody who wants to learn more about our lessons in the space. So please reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giles. Very interesting, very detailed, very concrete about how you commercially are already in a position to realize projects. Very, very interesting insight. So we will directly jump to the next interesting presentation. We have now Stefan Garabet with us. He is the CFO of Sunfire. He will present to us an overview over available electrolyzer technologies. Sunfire is the global market leader for industrial electrolyzers. The electrolyzers, based on an alkaline or solid oxide technologies, enable the transformation of energy-intensive sectors such as the chemical, fuel and steel industries. Before joining Sunfire, Stefan worked for Deutsche Bank and Hyfindr. And in his presentation today, as I just said, he will give an overview over the available electrolyzer technologies, as I understand from a commercial point of view as well. So welcome, and the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Glad to be here. Now, I was asked to give a quick introduction to the available electrolyzer technologies. You will hear this from a non-engineer, which may or may not work to your advantage, who knows, but I'll do my best, and please fire away with any questions you may have. Now, I want to start off by, and it was said before, Martin, you put it best, this can be a very attractive business case. Now, what you see here is the stipulated target picture, and I emphasize the word target picture. This is what the EU has put out there as a target by 2030, a gigantic target of 240 gigawatts. Now, if we were to realize this, this would mean that we would achieve something in 7.5 years that the wind industry has not achieved in 20 years. Yeah? So just to give you a feeling for the dimension or the magnitude of the challenge that we have ahead of us. And again, this is a target, this is not the demand yet. And it was said before, so again, the push needs to happen on the regulatory side to help create demand, to help FIDs take place sooner and really kick this off. But you know, just to set the stage, so potentially a very attractive market, and in particular, you know, being a technology provider in this space with quite a bit of potential. Who is Sunfire? To those of you who are not familiar with us, we are headquartered in Dresden. Sunfire was founded there 12 years ago. We have now grown into an organization of up to 400 people. So while we sometimes still read startup in the media about ourselves, we think that we have left the startup garage quite some time ago, and actually have sort of grown into what is, with now 400 people, as a pure play technology provider or electrolysis team, really an organization that is eye to eye, if not bigger than the likes of ThyssenKrupp or Siemens even. Yeah? So when you just compare the numbers here, then I think we really have a competitive force here. And it goes without saying that we believe that, you know, we have the most talented people in this industry. What else do I want to point out on this picture? Now, we of course have grown. We have founded, or we have production locations now in Geneva, Monte. This is the result of an acquisition. I will expand this on the following slides. We acquired a production site in Solingen for the galvanization of the electrodes that go into our equipment. And we have a subsidiary, a fuel cells business, similar to what was already described earlier with Hyref, yes, yeah. So this is basically Sunfire in a nutshell. What is worth pointing out, of course, I mean, we are predominantly still financed through private capital, so equity, as well as public funding, grants and subsidies. Tomorrow, in fact, and I do want to just announce the news here already. So we were now one of the first projects now under the IPCEI funding mechanisms that was awarded this grant. Now apparently the PR department of the Ministry of Economy declined that we can say how much it is, but I can tell you it's a significant amount that both the German government as well as the Saxonian government has now awarded to Sunfire. We're extremely pleased about this. It took forever to eventually get the green light, but we're glad that we have it. And again, this is one of the things that need to be set in motion, or that need to happen faster for us to really scale up and you know, provide the capacity that clearly everybody is screaming for. Yeah? So this, you will see the news come out tomorrow, but this is a huge step in the right direction. Now, our business model, at the core, we are a technology developer, a technology manufacturer, and of course then provide the service and maintenance that comes with it. Yeah? So that at its core is what Sunfire does. Now, when you go into large industrial projects, the customer demands full turnkey solutions, and this is something that we cannot do on our own. So here we work with EPC partners, SMS Group, very dominant in the steel industry. Also our shareholder is one of our partners here in this regard. But we also continue to look to expand our partner network in this area. In the context also for DRI, I think, Martin, you mentioned it earlier. Also here looking for partners to really expand our offering here, to really sort of leverage that piece of the value chain that you see here together with you know, effective partners. Now on to the technology piece. So Sunfire offers two pieces of, or has two technologies in its portfolio. We have alkaline and SOEC. Alkaline was acquired in the course of an acquisition that we did at the end of 2020 when we acquired the electrolysis business of what used to be the electrolysis business of the Swiss Logi Corporation. Some of you may be familiar with it. They actually separated from that business in the 1990s. And actually, I couldn't exactly tell you how the history eventually went, but part of that business eventually ended up in Switzerland, in Mazzei, with a significant track record of 30 or 40 years of already installed projects, predominantly in South America and Africa. So not quite the sort of industrial standard that you would now expect in the projects that we're about to realize, but still sufficient track record to collect data, to have sufficient know-how to understand how the technology works and how it runs also then in operations. The other part of that history actually went to McPhee, one of our competitors in France. So also they offer pressurized alkaline, but we both sort of share the same roots, so to speak. Now, and alkaline, just to explain this, this is basically the technology that is now ready to scale. This is the technology that is robust enough, that has the track record to be deployed now in larger industrial projects with all the guarantees that are required for the deployment. The SOEC, this is the technology with which Sunfire actually started. So 12 years ago, when hydrogen was just a funny molecule for some geeks with niche interests, the founding team of Sunfire always believed in hydrogen as being the sort of the key molecule for the energy transition, and they, based on a fuel cell patent, developed this into what is now today Sunfire's SOEC technology. So while it is still not commercially ready, it is what Sunfire actually has probably one of the longest track records in. Yeah? So if you look at other competitors, you will probably find that Sunfire, in terms of the validation projects that we were able to execute by now, the runtime that we can post, this is also something that you cannot disrupt from now, in a short period of time. So we truly believe that this is a technology where we are one of the key know-how bearers of this industry. We're working hard towards now bringing this technology to market, to industrialize it. A good portion of the funding now through IPCEI will go into the further development into the industrialization of our SOEC technology. And what you see here also two types of SOEC, HyLink and ZynLink. HyLink is for the production of pure hydrogen, and ZynLink stands for the production of syngas, so synthetic gas. And I think it was also mentioned before, so not only is this technology capable of producing hydrogen, but also through the injection of CO2, you can actually then also produce a syngas, which can then through Fischer-Tropsch be converted into a synthetic fuel, for example. Yeah? So this co-electrolysis capability is also, again, something which we believe sets this technology apart and offers a huge advantage. And together with these two technologies, we actually believe we have a really attractive portfolio which works really well, also complementary. So you have the robust, low temperature alkaline system, where in use cases where the customer cares about robustness, where the customer cares about price, where perhaps energy costs are not really that high, so the efficiency level of the alkaline is just good enough. In addition to that, we have the sort of more innovative SOEC technology, not ready just yet, but potentially then in 4 to 5 years' time to complement our portfolio then, and in particular in areas where energy prices are high, through its high efficiency level, to really offer a true OpEx advantage to our customers. Now, I spoke a lot about what Sunfire has to offer. There's, of course, still a third technology, so-called PEM. It was also mentioned before. PEM, in terms of readiness, is close to alkaline. In our view, not quite at the level of robustness that alkaline offers, but also with some advantages. And actually, speaking of advantages, I actually have them mapped out here. To put it in a nutshell, and I don't want to go into the detail, because if you want to talk about the left-hand slide, then I will ask a Sunfire chemical engineer to go through the ion flow with you. But I think for you as a key takeaway, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each technology? So starting with PEM, I think one of the key advantages is its small footprint and its ability to switch on and off very dynamically. So in particular for applications where you have direct connection to a renewable energy source, this may become relevant. It may be relevant for mobility applications, storage applications. The disadvantage clearly is still that the bomb contains a lot of so-called critical components such as iridium and platinum, difficult to source. The development is going in the direction of reducing that content, and I also believe this will happen over time. But you of course still have, from a sustainability point of view, it's still a bit of a difficult footprint. Yeah. The alkaline here, clearly, as I mentioned already, it's robust, it's mature, it's been in operation for many decades already. So it's an electrolysis concept that has been around for many decades, and you can find this in any sort of school chemical textbook. It is durable. It has no critical materials which are being deployed. However, still it's pretty sizable. Yeah, I mean we're talking about tons of steel that are being put on a footprint that is as large as this room. Yeah, so it's really a really sizable equipment. And you have here they have some you're still also dealing with chemicals at the end of the day. You have nickel being deployed. So here also the chemical handling can sometimes work to your disadvantage. And now the SOEC, I already mentioned it. Clearly the most significant advantage over the other technologies is the high level of efficiency. Now we have a validation project with Salzgitter, for example, where just recently we posted 84%, which compares to around, I believe, 58 to 60% for the PEM and around 62 to 64 for the alkaline. So really, I mean, and I think all of you guys in this room understand how relevant energy efficiency economics are in the energy space. This is a huge advantage, yeah? And so this really has the potential to really offer significant OpEx reduction to our customers. But again, not quite ready yet. The other advantage I already mentioned is also the co-electrolysis capabilities, so the ability to produce hydrocarbons. Disadvantages, and this is still true for today, and this is also what we're working on in commercializing or industrializing this technology. We're working on essentially two main aspects. So one is, while the value proposition of efficiency has been shown and proven, the system is still way too expensive today. So we are currently working on really bringing down the capex for the system, because as it is today, total cost of ownership is not competitive for this technology yet. So one is bringing down cost, bringing down capex for our customer for this equipment, and the other is improve the level of degradation, because currently the level of degradation leads to a comparatively lower stack lifetime. So while the alkaline system is currently at around 90,000 hours approximately, so give or take 10 years, with the SOEC you're currently at maybe 40% of that. Yeah? So we're currently working on extending the lifetime, because that again increases your capex and your total cost of ownership eventually. Yeah. Now we are deploying our technology in commercial projects. Yeah, so I think it's important to understand, I would say up until last year, Sunfire has been predominantly an R&D company, a technology company, putting a portfolio into place, and we're now really transitioning into an industrial provider of electrolysis equipment. A huge change, I can tell you. It's a massive transformation also for Sunfire as an organization. But it's happening now. So we upon the acquisition of the business in Switzerland, very quickly we were able to generate a very attractive opportunity pipeline, including such names as RWE, who eventually then awarded us a 10 megawatt project in Lingen, where they have a larger hydrogen ambition. We signed a contract with P2X beginning of this year. So P2X is a Finnish project developer. Again, these numbers, 10 and 20 megawatt, you all know, these are not industrial-sized projects, but they are the first step to really then, get to know the technology and eventually roll this out for what clearly are much bigger ambitions. And last but not least, and I really want to point this out, you may have seen this when we concluded our financing round in March this year. We onboarded CIP, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, as one of our investors. And part of the participation of CIP was the conclusion of a framework agreement in the amount of 640 megawatt, as you see here. I personally believe they will want much more eventually. But it's basically a take-or-pay contract, if you like. Yeah. So basically, what we sign up to is we will deliver you that volume, and they signed up to we will take this volume off of you. And this is really quite important at this point in time in the current market phase to have this de-risking. And I truly believe, and I think CIP saw it the same way, it creates a win-win situation for both the project developer as well as the technology provider. So from a project developer perspective, CIP has security over supply for their projects. So one critical aspect of planning their projects is sort of de-risked. And of course, for us, now deploying huge amounts of capital into a huge capacity build-up, it's also a significant de-risking of our own business plan to know that we have this offtake in terms of equipment over time. So and when you ask us, I think you brought this up also, like what are the ways of maybe helping this industry also further to invest and build up capacity. In my personal opinion, it's exactly agreements like this that will help technology providers in this current phase of the market to really go out there and deploy capital, knowing that there will be offtake. Because so far, I said it before, the 240 gigawatt, it's a political ambition at this point in time. It's not real demand yet. It hopefully will turn into real demand at some point, but it isn't yet. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Very interesting insights. And you managed to do something which several teachers in my youth failed, to explain to me some differences, but principal mechanisms of electrolyze. Perfect. Thank you very much from a personal point of view.
Second career path for me then.
Exactly. I think we have some questions in the audience here.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I have one question. I have many questions, but I only ask one. You talked about the most efficient solution you have. Could you give some numbers? How many kilowatts, gigawatts? So the most, you have one solution which is the most energy efficient one. And could you say how much energy you need and what you're getting out of it?
So the SOC technology has an efficiency level, and this is relative to output to input energy of 82 to 84% now. So this is where the technology currently stands. Yeah.
So that's also a real cost advantage.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, so in particular in areas where energy prices are really high. I mean, in some areas where the price per kilowatt is so low, it may not be of such huge value to the customer, but this is a significant OPEX advantage. Yeah.
Any further questions in the audience? From the online tool, there was a further question similar to your question. Whether the electricity prices create a substantial risk and whether this risk depends on the technology used in the electrolyzer sphere.
I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question. I think it goes in the direction of if prices decline further, will the value proposition of this decline because nobody cares about 84% efficiency anymore. I mean, the good thing about this technology is, and maybe I didn't emphasize this enough, is also the core electrolysis piece that this offers, right? And if you believe also in the market, in the offtake market of aviation, of maritime, think of the development of power to liquid projects, then here you have the clear advantage that you have this co-functionality already built into the system. However, we believe that still for energy prices not to matter significantly enough not to choose a technology that has this level of efficiency. You're talking about areas where, I don't know, the price per kilowatt is probably below 2 cents. I don't know. I mean, and I don't know, in Europe, I don't have the full map in front of me now, what the price map is, but probably not that many areas. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, we had been in various regions of the world already, and it's time to take you up north. Please join me in welcome Kaiser Rittberg-Wallgren as Executive Vice President and Head of Hydrogen and Iron Business Unit at H2 Green Steel. The company was founded in 2020 with the aim of establishing large-scale green steel production in the Boden region in northern Sweden. I hope it's a little bit colder there. In addition to her role at H2 Green Steel, she sits at the board of Swedish fuel cell maker PowerCell. In the past, Kaiser also worked for Peab, Yara and Sandvik. Today, Kaiser will share with us how H2 Green Steel is helping to decarbonize industries that are difficult to abate. Kaiser, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. I hope you can hear me well. It's a pleasure to be invited to this meeting today, and I would have loved to be there in person, but we have a very big day tomorrow in Stockholm, and I will get into what that is, so I had to stay here. So H2 Green Steel is the name of our company. It's a new company, it's a startup, and honestly, we are actually not really a steel company, so who knows, we might need to change the name in the future. I will get back to that. Next slide, please. Our purpose is to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries, and we start with steel. That's not where we end. I will get back to what I mean by that. We do this for 5 stakeholders. If you work in industrial companies and if you are in business school, you learn that the 3 stakeholders from left to the center are areas you really need to focus on. If you are in a hydrogen company, or if I look at hydrogen companies of today, you tend to over-focus on the right side of our stakeholders, of the planet and society, but you maybe forget a bit about bankability. We treat all these 5 stakeholders equally important. So, for instance, on the financial side, obviously, we are reporting our P&L, our result, etc., and we have to have a bankable case to do what we do. But we are equally actually measuring now and setting up a structure for, you could call it a proxy P&L for CO2 accounting, because everything we do will have a CO2 transaction or footprint connected to it. So that's how we treat our stakeholders, and by doing this, we're truly creating an impact company that is bankable with interesting financial returns. And that's where we believe that you can really accelerate the transition, the green transition. Next one, please. So our purpose is to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries, and we start with steel. And then you could ask yourself, why steel? First of all, it has been proven already by another company in the north of Sweden called Hyfindr, which is a consortium of an energy company, mining company, and a steel company. In a pilot, they proved that you can actually produce green steel, reducing the CO2 emissions by 95 or 97%. So it had been proven from a technology point of view in a pilot scale, and also the steel industry accounts for about 8% of global CO2 emissions, or from an industrial point of view, actually 28%. So it is significant. So if we can address it, and if you basically the world doesn't need another pilot, it needs large scale. So if we do that, we can address and really make a huge impact for the world. Next, please. Also, and I will get back to this later on, there is a demand now, there's a very strong drive from prominent customers around the world that they want to have a carbon-free product. It's not only because it's expensive in the future, or assumed to be more expensive in the future to have carbon included in your product, but also because they want to offer this to their customers. So they are committing to science-based targets. This number is a bit outdated now, so there are more and more customers every day coming into this scheme. And they are asking not only for scope 1 and 2 emission reduction, but also scope 3. And that's where the steel industry really comes into play. So there is strong demand from the customer side, and obviously they don't only care about this for Europe, where you would have in some years then where you will be penalized from a CO2 cost point of view, but they're looking for this globally because they need to be able to produce carbon-free or low-carbon products everywhere. Next, please. I'm not going to go into the details here, but another item that is really incentivizing the steel industry to transform now is the ETS, so the carbon trading system that we have in Europe. That combined with a free allocation system that has been in place for many years, that's what you see on top. So basically the free allocations will be phased out. There was a recent discussion about this in the European Union Commission, and it will be phased out. So you could say that from now on, or basically with a big impact from 27 and until 2035, you will need to pay for your emissions. There is no free lunch anymore. So you will need to pay for it. And then if you take into account that a traditional way of producing steel emits about 2 tons CO2 per ton of steel, if you do nothing, you will have a huge cost impact towards the end of this period. So you need to put 300, if we go exact here, 342 euro extra per ton of steel that you produce. And I mean, the steel industry is not that fat in terms of margins, so that would be very difficult for stimulus to carry. And they need to put it, or basically push it forward to the customer. And then you can ask yourself as a customer, would I like to pay a surcharge for a carbon cost, or do I prefer to pay a premium for a green product, which means that I can actually take a green premium for my car or my dishwasher or whatever you use your steel for? I think the answer is pretty clear on that question. Next one, please. So to go a little bit deeper into how we are actually then using hydrogen to abate this very heavy industry, starting from the traditional steel production route, the one on the top, basically what you do is that you bring iron ore from the mine, you pelletize it and take that to the iron making step, the blast furnace. So in iron ore, you have oxygen that you have to get rid of to produce iron and steel. What you do today in the traditional route, you take coking coal into that process, you heat it up, and you kick off a chemical reaction where the carbon in your coal is connecting to oxygen, and you release CO2 as a byproduct, and huge amounts of it. So if there's one thing you need to remember about the steel value chain, it's really that step. So the steel industry needs to find another way and get out of the blast furnace route as it is now when you use coal. Then you have the steel making part where you have some emissions depending on your electricity mix and sources, I would say. But on average, you have 2 tons CO2 per ton of steel if you are going for the traditional production route. If you instead then move into electrifying it, obviously you can't electrify everything, but you can electrify a certain part of it. So what you would do, you would basically decommission your blast furnace. Instead, you can build something called a DR reactor, or direct reduction reactor. That's not a new thing. That's been around for 50 years in the market. It's very common in the Middle East, for instance, but you use natural gas into it, and the natural gas is then the reducing agent instead of coal. What is actually happening in the reactor in this setup is that you are reforming natural gas into hydrogen and carbon monoxide, and those two are reducing out the oxygen from your iron ore. So you could say that iron ore is already used to hydrogen, but not pure hydrogen. So if you, instead of using natural gas, you use pure hydrogen. The only kind of the challenging part here is really to because you need to heat up the hydrogen then in the DO reactor. So that is an innovative part and a challenging part when you are going for large volumes. So you basically need to heat your hydrogen up to 980 degrees to kick off this chemical reaction. So that's how you use hydrogen in the steel industry to really take out huge amounts of CO2. If you then produce your hydrogen with fossil-free electricity, you are almost at zero. So instead, of course, if you are in a geography with great conditions from a renewable energy point of view, and if you use that throughout your value chain and production setup, instead of emitting 2 tons CO2 per ton of steel, you can come down to about 100 kilo. Next one, please. So what we are doing in H2 Green Steel, or H2GS, we are building a 5 million ton green steel factory emitting or reducing the emissions from the steel industry by 95%. In order to do so, we need to build also a gigascale electrolyser, and I will get back to a bit more on the details there. Right now, we are in our B round of financing. So we closed our A round around 85 million euro in May last year. And we are now in our B round, aiming for 4 billion euro. So it's a significant investment. Our phase 1 production volume will be about 2.5 million ton. Our ambition is to have the first customer deliveries in 2025. I'm happy to share that, and why I'm here in Stockholm is tomorrow we will get a message from the court, hopefully a positive one, because it's about our permit. It's our permissibility permit, and that means that if we get that positive tomorrow, we can basically start ground preparations in the site next week. Or we could tomorrow, I guess, but to give it some preparation time next week. So that's a huge step for us, and it's also fundamental because, as you can guess, being in the north of Sweden, we have pretty heavy winters, and we need to start the ground preparation now in the summer to meet our plan of delivering customer orders in 2025. We also do this, and another item I would like to highlight here, in close customer partnerships. Some of the names here you can see have invested in us in our A round. Some of them have signed offtake agreements because we have already sold, out of the first phase production, we have sold 1.5 million ton of green steel. That is at the value of about 10 billion euro. It's a take or pay agreements and at a premium above brown steel, average 25%. So we're actually selling the volume before we build the plant, and that's a way for us. It's really an important part of our financing as well, to prove that there is a demand for our product. So hopefully we will see yellow diggers going into the ground already next week. Next one, please. A little bit more details on what we're building. So we are building 760 megawatt electrolysis. And I think by listening to the other presentations, you realize that 760 megawatt is huge. Another thing that is quite innovative in what we do is that we are combining 3 technologies. The majority will be alkaline. Alkaline is very good for the base load. It's a proven technology, comes at a lower capex. That's going to be the majority. We will have about 100 megawatt PEM or pressurized alkaline. We haven't decided yet, and the reason for that is that it's coming a little bit later in the phasing. We have that because we want to, it's not to take out peaks in the spot market on electricity, because we work with PPAs, but it's more to work with grid balancing services. In order to do so, we also need a small storage. So we will only have about 1 to 2 hours of storage. Storage is today expensive. So we're trying to minimize that, and we can do that because the energy zone that we are in have an abundance of green electricity and mainly hydropower. So we can use that instead. In addition, we have developed applied for 2 patents related to the digital side, the machine learning side, for how to operate the electrolysis plant, basically how to optimize it at all times between the storage and the grid balancing services, how to use your different technologies to be able to keep the cost as low as possible at all times. Another patent we applied or filed for is how you configure your large-scale hydrogen plant. Because depending on your electricity zone, depending on the offtake, etc., you can do it in a different way to reach the levelized cost of hydrogen over time at a low level. The third technology we use for electrolysis is solid oxide. About 20 megawatt we will have. And that one will be located next to our electric arc furnace in the steel mill. And we can use the steam coming out of that to increase the efficiency even further. The green iron part will be 2 million ton, and that will feed then hot directly into the steel mill, saving a lot of energy by doing that. And then you basically in the steel mill, we will have a mini mill concept with an electric arc furnace. We will also have some extra volumes of the iron part, so the DRI it's called. We can convert that to something called HBI or hot briquette iron. And that's a product that we can trade globally. So that means that by doing this, not only are we decarbonizing or producing a steel in our own mill at the very low CO2 footprint, but we can also enable other steel mills in Europe that has an electric arc furnace and doesn't want, or it actually makes no sense for them to put up a direct reduction plant that is heavily dependent on green electricity, but they could rather buy the green HBI, and by doing that, significantly reduce the CO2 emissions. And by doing this, so I could also mention some numbers, you're probably interested in that. Phase 1, we will need about 10 terawatt hours of renewable power. Phase 2 is about 15 terawatt hours. By doing this, we will take out about 10 million ton CO2 per year. This has a huge, huge impact. I should also mention before I conclude the presentation that obviously this is repeatable, what we do in the right electricity zones, energy zones, and where you have access to iron ore. This can be repeated over and over again. And basically, we don't need to build all 3 of them again to decarbonize the steel industry. We can just bring 2 of them, which is green hydrogen and green iron. Next one, please. And basically, what we see here already now is happening is that we are building, so because we are building this large-scale green hydrogen production facility with green iron as the first step, as an off-taker, as an anchor that require a lot of green hydrogen, we can add additional off-takers around this as kind of as a hub setup. That could benefit from the gigascale setup. So, I mean, the limiting factor right now is how much power you can get to one point, basically. But that we see that happening already, and for other projects that we are looking at, this is what we look at before we actually consider what we should build. Should also say where I started the presentation, and you can go to the next one here. It is really so. Our focus is, our purpose is to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. We start with steel, but that's not where we stop, because what we build, the knowledge we build and the company and the blueprint we build is really centered around large-scale green hydrogen production for direct industrial offtake. That's what we do. That's our competence, and that is some repeatable also in other hard-to-abate sectors. We do believe steel is coming first. The reason for that is it's a short value chain, and by building these 3 production steps, we can put a green steel product on the market that, for instance, the BMW, the Mercedes knows what they could pay for, and they know how much extra they could take for that car as a green car to the consumer. And honestly, you don't need to increase the price a lot to cover that cost when it's produced where we are. If you compare that to ammonia, which is more intuitive, I would say an easier one because they already use a lot of hydrogen today, but they are highly sensitive to cost, and the value chain is very, very long. So from where the cost increases, that is at the first step, basically where you produce the hydrogen for your ammonia reactor, that's where the cost increases. And then you have a long way to the farmer and an even longer way to the store where you buy the bread. And that's why I believe that the ammonia will definitely come, but it will take some more time. But we do have dialogues with companies in all these sectors that you see on this slide, which has an interest to get access to low-cost green hydrogen production and large volumes of it. So with that said, thanks a lot for listening. Fingers crossed that we tomorrow will have our a positive response from the court for the permit. And then it's going to be super exciting to start the ground preparation, hopefully already next week.
Thank you very much, Kesa. I'm asking the audience here in the room whether there are any questions. Otherwise, I start with a question from the online chat. The question is, where does the energy come from to run such a factory or to produce the hydrogen needed?
So Sweden is divided in 4 electricity zones. This plant will be located in SE1, which is the one in the north. Most people in Sweden live actually in the south or in the Stockholm area. So there are almost no people, and that's also where you have most of the hydropower in Sweden. In addition to that, the grid has a quite bad connection from north to south. So you could say that you have a lot of green electricity that is landlocked in that region. So basically, the answer to your question is that most of our energy will be coming from hydropower, but there's also coming in new wind power into the region. So it will be a mix of hydropower and wind power, but the base load will basically be hydropower.
Much for your answer. Are there any? There's one further question.
Yes, I have one. How much roughly of your power consumption have you actually already procured? How many of these wind turbines are already standing, and how many will have to be built? And in what kind of, let's say, price range could you actually procure all that power? Is it around 20, 30, 40, 50? Thanks a lot.
So just to clarify, we are not building any wind power or any power whatsoever by ourselves. So we are connecting to the grid. So we're going to take all electricity through the grid. There is no need to build new power to start our production. So there's a lot of overcapacity right now in the region. But so basically, we are working with PPAs. Right now, like I said, for the first period, we need 10 terawatt hours per year. For the first phase, we need 10 terawatt hours per year. And we have so far secured 2 terawatt hours on PPA. And I can't go into the details of that because that's confidential, the levels. But you can be in the range of 30 euro per megawatt hour in that region on a PPA contract. I should also say that this is probably the worst time in history to negotiate long-term PPAs. And we prefer not to put in too much in contracts right now, but rather to wait a bit, because we do believe that the prices will come down.
Any further questions? Otherwise, it's a clear sign for the moderator that something has to happen, either a break or a closing. I try to combine both. Originally, we have on the agenda a panel discussion scheduled for 45 minutes. I think it's a little bit much, considering the temperature and the time which we already have reached. Therefore, I suggest the following. We have now all those speakers who are here in presence today available for further questions of your side. Otherwise, I have 2 or 3 questions which I just wanted to provide to each of them. And then we would, instead of having a formal panel discussion, having more like a bar discussion with some fresh, cool drinks and some finger food for you. If you agree, I would therefore ask my colleague to hand over the microphone so we do not have to take on all those technology aspects. And I would take some questions or provide some questions to each of the speakers. Simple ones, don't worry. Perhaps to start in order of today's presentations, first question would be to you. I understand that from your B2B platform activities, you are also involved in many areas of activities around the world. Can you tell us whether you have the impression that different perceptions, different mindsets are active, and where are the differences around the world? Perhaps you can.
Thank you for your question. So one remark, or what I realized, I am quite surprised that I have not heard today once the word China. Yeah, and I can only tell you that when we talk about investment risks and scaling up, it is globally happening, and the countries are going on a different speed. I think that I have talked to more than 100 companies in the past year, because when people approach us and want to learn about, you learn about what they are doing, and they are very open, and we are treating this information with care. But you see Australia being bold, you see China in the scaling up phase, you're seeing Europe waiting for public funding with lengthy processes. You're seeing Canada being ready. You're seeing USA wanting to learn from Europe how to do it. And I think we are in the middle. We are in a great position. We have the technology. But the main risk I see is that if we don't scale up now, our products will not compete on price and quality in 5 years' time. And therefore, the sourcing is taking place already globally, because you cannot find reliable components in one single country. Yeah. So Stephen and I built a product with 300 components, and we have sourced from Australia to Canada everywhere because there is nothing available. So I think it is important to step up a bit and move fast on a global scale.
Thank you for this view on that. Speeding up is, I think, a challenge. One question to my regulatory colleagues: what can you do to help speeding up things?
Well, as I always say, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm not making the laws. I'm just advising on them. No, fun aside. I think the lesson or the message is clearly understood also from legislators. I know that the processes, in particular on the EU side, have been dragging on, and issues are perceived as being solved slowly. However, and that's one thing I would like to emphasize, the EU has also acted on some lessons learned, which had huge impacts on the market, and particularly the renewable market. So the regulatory framework being seen right now and being set up right now is a regulatory framework which should be up and running for several years without having the need for retroactive changes, which effectively killed the markets in several European member states. And having advised on really interesting questions on energy charter treaties and claims in terms of Spanish renewable projects and so on and so forth, that's not a small task to make, to set up a a regulatory framework which is up and running for several years. That's one thing I'd like to highlight, and which I think is clearly important. The other thing is that certainly the interests of several member states which are entirely opposing each other. Spain and Italy were clearly in favor of the discussion, were clearly in favor of not having, excluding wind and solar farms which have received public funding, because that means there will be a huge ton of new wind and solar farms being built up in countries which have sun, wind and space available, and that's not Germany. So Germany was on the entire opposite side, and to take these decisions, this takes time. That being said, I think that the message became clear. One thing which we discussed a lot, that's maybe the last point I'm going to make, is on the demand side. Demand is created, and that became very clear in the very good last presentation, is created by CO2 prices. And we haven't even started raising them. And that's going to start now. And it's all over Europe. If you will, I be German about it and be very blunt. The fun part is over in terms of CO2 prices. So that's where the demand will come, and it will come fast, because now the part is starting where the EU ETS is really starting to kick in. Thank you.
It was a short question and a rather short answer. Regulatory.
Yeah. There's no clear yes or no.
One question to Andrew Cope and also Stefan Garabet from the technical point of view. Stefan Garabet, I think you mentioned IPSAI and public funding. Is it important for you, and does it work? What are your experiences with public funding, especially more complex ones on the EU level?
So, I mean, this is, we just received it, so there's not much, I cannot give you lessons learned just yet, just from the application process, perhaps. But I mean, as I said before, so public funding has been one of the two principal sources of funding for Sunfire so far. So it has played a tremendous role in getting Sunfire to the point where it is today. In the past, it has been predominantly focused on R&D exclusively, and these have been R&D grants more by the German government. But they can be really a powerful instrument. I mean, you have to think that in the past, approximately 60% of the budgeted R&D cost was then reimbursed. So, you know, for a company that is not profitable and not cash flow positive yet, this is really an important source of funding. Interesting now with IPSAI, it goes beyond just R&D funding. It also extends to CapEx, for example. Here, the mechanism as it is set out today, I don't get an upfront financial support for the CapEx that we are about to undertake. So I don't know, take a machine costing, I don't know, 10 million. I will have to pay that 10 million upfront. I can get the depreciation reimbursed over time, 60% of that. So while in total it's a good sum of financial support, there's a sort of a time lag, and here what is being discussed is to what extent, perhaps, given that this is now meant to help us accelerate also a production upscaling, whether actually a part of that overall grant can be already paid out as a sort of lump sum, in particular for these sort of CapEx cases. Yeah.
Well, let me just stand up here quickly so I don't have to turn myself around.
Join me.
Well, from our point of view, being a fairly small company, I can tell you, life is tough. And a lot of the public funding and things actually pass by, because they're more related to big infrastructure, big things, big companies, whatever, and not so much on small, very agile, quick things. I'll give you one example. Just now, recently, well, two examples. One, on the technology side, we are seeing we have to prove everything, right? There has been a little bit of an over-promising in the past from the market regarding also fuel cells and different things. You know, it's always difficult when that happens, and then you have to step up and then actually prove. Now everything's different. You know? People don't like to hear that. They want to have the proof. So we have to prove that we are there, that we are resilient, that we are reliable, and so on. So that's why we are intensifying all these different kind of pilot stuff and so on. Yeah, it's tough. And the other issue is like it's more operational topics where I would like to see more help also from let's say the regulatory side, is for instance bringing things into the market. Now we have one topic where we are able to sell a couple of hundred fuel cells into a country which has, let's say, banking problems. So how do I deal with that? Those are like day-to-day issues of saying, okay, I can easily now we can export German technology, we can put things in place, and then get the diesel generators out of the world, so to say, more quickly. But they are sidetracked by other things and easily fixable in a way, because if you have some body, some bank or whatever, it's like there that can take over that, at least share the risk or take that over, we're in the game. Actually, all of us are in the game, right? So it would be nice if these kind of thoughts are more practical in some sense.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Then I have one question to the equity and debt financing experts in this room, but I only have one microphone. Perhaps both of you could join me here in front of the audience. And the question is the same for both of you. I learned that you are already involved in projects and their financing, and you are having specific plans in financing. Where will we see, when we have perhaps a European view, where we will see the first large-scale projects able to professional equity, long-term equity financing and project financing arise? Where will this be? Will it be in Germany with a complex regulatory structure, or will it be somewhere else? Your view, please.
Equity first.
This is exactly what I said. There's a time for equity. That comes later. Thanks. Yeah, I think from the situation, and for a second, let's look globally. The MENA region definitely has some elements what can make really huge projects happening. The problem is they definitely don't need German or European equity money. So they are long in cash, and they want to make the transformation in order to come from the, let's say, oil and gas market century into the hydrogen century. So they push hard into that market. In Europe, I think we need regulatory support, and here Germany can play a huge pressure, because if you look into the CO2 map for a second in Europe, then you will realize we have a huge, let's call it red, bottle and basket in Duisburg. So this is where Kaiser said we have to save the CO2, and this is the steel industry. So these are two elements where I believe could happen in the near future, because they are really under pressure.
Excellent. Thank you very much to both of you. And I think it's time to say thank you to all of you. Thanks for all your valuable contributions, your questions, and your interest in our event today. I'm sure there are many more topics to cover and questions to discuss, which we have opportunity to do so shortly in a short notice. And I think we should talk soon about when we will have the next Munich Hydrogen Summit, perhaps in winter time, and not on the hottest summer day I've experienced so far here. But thank you all again. Thanks to all of you here in the audience and to those who joined us online. More than 200 participants were online. We hope you enjoyed the event and the contents. As I mentioned in the beginning, we will provide all of you with the presentations of today, which will also include the contact details of our valuable speakers, so that you can also address further questions directly to them. We hope to see you all of you again soon. In the meantime, please keep an eye out for more updates on our website, on the UniCredit website, because we are both very active in this sector and we're trying to publishing most updated developments. Giannalberto, I know that also the results of your working group are published in more detail there, so there is lecture for the weekend available. And now for the last time, thanks again for visiting us today. Stay safe and goodbye. Thank you.